Alrighty, sir. So, do you enjoy your line of work, and why or why not?
I do enjoy my line of work very much. You never enjoy everything that you do 100% of the time, but my job is very important to me. It aligns very well with my personal philosophies in life, and I don't just work for the weekend like a lot of people do. I'm very passionate about what I do, and I feel like I'm doing something that I enjoy on a daily basis, but which is also very important to me. So I've had a lot of different jobs in my life, and I definitely count myself lucky to have this one.
Awesome. Yeah, and it definitely shows with y'all's rapid progress in this industry for sure.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So, again, what's a typical day in this industry like a work day?
So speaking for myself, I work remote. So a typical day, I have a home office. I get up, I fire up the computer. I've got a two monitor setup, and I do the usual, make some coffee type thing. And I generally will work from my home office 5 days a week, Monday through Friday until about 6 p.m. at best. And I often work straight through lunch and don't even eat a lunch. And everything that I do is, everything that I do on a regular work day is computer based. It's Microsoft Teams and virtual meetings and correspondence through email. And I have a range of responsibilities that I have to be accountable for. And if nothing else is going on, I try to take care of those responsibilities. I try to always get caught up on correspondence first thing. I keep a zero inbox, so I check every message that I get, including the junk mail. And if I don't need it, if it's junk mail, it gets thrown away. But I check every message. I always like to say there are two kinds of people in the world. There are people who keep a zero inbox and check every message, and then there are people who have to apologize for missing things.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
So, when you have that person who's like, "Oh, I don't remember seeing that," and then you look over their shoulder and they've got 372 unread emails, well, okay, that explains why you don't know what's going on. So just keeping up with correspondence by itself is a burden that has to be addressed daily, because if you don't check it every day, then the next day you need to check it twice as much, and if you don't check it for 2 days, then you've got three times as much to check. So just staying on top of correspondence and emails and messages and things like that is a big part of it. And then of course there are times when I call it putting out a fire. You wake up and something's on fire. Somebody had a bad experience with customer service. Somebody broke a product and now they're on Facebook or they're on internet forums saying that your company sucks and they're never going to spend another dime on your product again. Or you have a computer issue with billing or shipping or something like that that's internal and the public won't even know, but it's threatening the business somehow. And I call those situations fires. And sometimes you have to stop what you're doing and put out a fire or manage a fire. And that might mean that the thing you thought you were going to do today never happens at all, and you just never get to the thing that was your goal to do for today. But something unexpected was more important. So so you have to be flexible in that. You have to be ready for that, and you have to roll with it. And your coworkers have to roll with it too. They have to understand that, hey, we're not going to get our regular stuff done because something went wrong on the Black Friday sale, for example. Everybody had to fix the Black Friday sale thing that went wrong. But that didn't actually happen this year. Fortunately, we did pretty good, and we triple checked everything, and there were only a couple of little wrinkles that we had to deal with. But I've been in situations with other companies before where the Black Friday sale goes wrong, and you're just running around with your hair on fire until it's fixed. And everybody else is going to have to understand nothing's going to get done until that issue is fixed.
Okay. Yeah, and I have made that point in school too before, where I'm like, forum posts and stuff like that, social media posts can have such a huge impact, an undue impact on a company's reputation.
Oh yeah, they absolutely can, and that wasn't true, even 15 years ago.
Right.
But in 2020, it's massively true.
Yeah.
That's how people are shopping now. That's how brands are made
Right.
these days. You can pay a lot of money for. I'm tangenting here, but this is important. You know, ad space in Guns and Ammo magazine is fantastically expensive. It's ridiculously expensive
And
to
probably
get.
not that effective. I haven't
I
haven't
don't
bought
think.
a Guns and Ammo magazine since like 2010 or something.
Right. And to get a little ad in the margins of the magazine, forget like a full page ad. I'm talking about one of the little ads in the margins. It's $3,500 or $4,000 to get
That's
in the door with
stupid.
those guys,
Yeah.
right? And my point is I can spend advertising money on that sort of ad, and then one guy who posts a bad review on AR15.com that's seen by 5,000 people on a free website forum is going to undo all of the reputation that I hope to gain by that nice, slickly produced ad that we all took company time and money to produce.
Mm-hmm.
It's all going to be undone because one guy says, these guys didn't honor their warranty. Oh, well, you're just, like, who cares how good the photo of the product looked and, how nice your logo is.
Right.
If people are reading on the forums that you don't honor your warranty, you're toast. You stand no chance, no matter how much money you spend on print ads and stuff. So in that way, I don't know that. I hope that having a strong presence on social media can help you, but I know that not having a strong presence on social media can hurt you. It may not help you out that much, but if you don't have it, you're going to get hurt very badly.
Yeah.
So that makes it kind of a necessity, really just to put out fires more than anything else. Even if you don't really care to push social media because it's not your thing, you can't afford to ignore it.
Got you. So my next question here is, so we're going to shift gears a little bit. So if I were to try to get into this industry, regardless of the company, what are the typical things that employers are looking for in their employees in this specific industry?
Okay. So yeah, I've got the same questions up on my screen.
Oh, okay.
So I'm kind of following along here. So I think what they're working, there's a couple different levels to this here. So traditionally, I'm kind of getting ahead with how do most people successfully get into this industry, number 5. But traditionally, a lot of people who get in the industry are former military, former law enforcement, or at some point they have been paid to carry the gun. And so they are seen as experts because they were once professionals, and they were once professional shooters, basically, or that's the perception of it, and so they turn around and they sell that as, hey, I know what I'm doing when it comes to law enforcement pistol shooting.
Yeah,
Or,
that
hey,
could
I
be
know
good
what I'm
because
doing
you know
when-
what the end user is
Right.
looking for. Yeah.
So that's kind of traditional. That's not as true as it used to be. I'm not one of those guys. I'm not former law enforcement or military, so I kind of wheedled my way in over time. And I think that there are so many military guys and law enforcement guys who think that they're hot stuff because they had a badge or they had a rank, but they really are inept and they don't know what they're doing. That's kind of almost that's really hurt that traditional approach.
Good Lord, that's not just a problem in this industry. That's a problem within the military too. You think you have
Right.
rank, so automatically you know everything.
Right. And a lot of guys, and there's a lot of that sort of issue of, the stolen valor of how everybody, says they were once a super secret squirrel Navy SEAL, and there's nothing wrong with being whatever you were. You don't have to exaggerate it. Like, it's okay to be a truck driver for the Army. It really is. It's okay. It's okay to be a cook. You know, the high speed, low drag operator guys who are kicking doors down, they do it a lot better when they're on a full stomach and they don't have food poisoning. So being a cook matters. Just say I was a cook. You don't have to pretend that you were, force recon or whatever. And there's
Yeah.
so much of that. There's so much of like pretense and pretending and flat out lying about what you did during your time that a lot of employers are really getting rather skeptical of they hear it over and over again, and they're getting skeptical of it. So that's a tradition that's changing quickly. I would say what employers are looking for more than anything else is work ethic, being a self-starter, being able to communicate and coordinate with others effectively day after day. They're really looking for a guy, whether it's a virtual office or a real office. You're looking for that person that you don't mind seeing their face when you walk in the door every day.
Hmm.
You can have an amazing resume, and you can have been with this company and that company, and you could have, gotten a medal when you were fighting in the battle of whatever in Africa. But if they don't like you and they don't want to see your face every day because you're just a jerk and you're arrogant or whatever, and your personality is incompatible with the other people in the office, you're not going to last.
Mm.
So being personable and being easy to get along with and being the kind of person that doesn't have to get their way every single time, it matters a lot. And I think it can matter a lot more than a fancy resume. The fancy resume might help you get hired in the first place, but being a good person and a good coworker will help you keep the job longer than 2 months.
Raj, yeah, I
Um,
understand.
Yeah, and there are people out there, I've seen them, there are people out there who interview really well, and they have a ton of really cool businesses and stuff on their resume, and my opinion on those people has actually changed over time. I used to be super impressed that this guy has worked for 12 different companies, and these 4 out of 12 were Fortune 500 companies, and he was highly placed. Ooh, wow. And now when I see that, I think to myself, well, you've worked for 12 companies in the last 20 years. That means you can't hold a job more than 2 years.
Mm.
What that really means. It means they find out that you aren't really that great to be around, and they kick you to the curb, and then you try to, reinvent yourself. So, yeah, the other thing is, like I said, you got to be a self-starter. So you understand this from a military point of view. There are the guys who find work to do, and then there are guys who avoid work put in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
Guess which one do you want to hire? Guess which one you want to work with?
Yeah, that makes sense for sure.
You want to work with the guy who's looking for work, who's looking for the next thing to do. What's the next thing that I can do to help us move forward? Who needs help? What can I do to make a difference today, right now, and help us in some small way? What's the next thing? What's the next thing that has to be done? That's the guy that you want. You don't want the guy who you have to tell him what all of his tasks are, and then he does the bare minimum to check the box on those tasks, and then he comes to you and goes, "Okay, I'm done. I guess I'm going to head out early."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, that's not the guy. That's not the guy that you want. You don't want the guy that you have to micromanage and tell him to tie his left shoe, then tie his right shoe, then put on his belt. No, freaking show up. Do what you can, what you know you can do, and then ask, what else can I do? What else can I do today? Who else needs help? That will get you. And if you can show them that you're that kind of guy in the interview process, they're looking for clues that you're that guy, even while they're interviewing you, because it matters that much.
Mm.
Yeah,
So
that's a
that pretty
huge
much answers 3 through 5 here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, right at the bat. So we can move to 6 here. In what areas do you see this industry experiencing the most growth going forward? I know we spoke the other day about the smart optics. You think that might be where the whole optics industry is going?
Yeah, it's clearly the future for those who can afford it and who can afford to develop it.
Well, I mean,
in
you
terms
get
of
SIG putting it out for so astronomically, ununderstandably low prices. Maybe, that will really help spur that growth in the future. What do you think?
yeah, it's quite possible. I mean, it's something that how do I say this? We've known it's been coming for a long time, those who pay attention.
Right.
You know, it's one of those things that routinely has sort of been talked about, like, wouldn't it be cool if ...
Right.
If we could do that. Oh, that's going to happen someday, you know. And then it never comes, and you sort of forget about it, you know. And it sort of becomes like, you know, how, you know, Popular Mechanics says we're going to have flying cars in the next 15 years. Yeah, they've been saying that since the 1970s, you know.
Right.
Oh, flying cars, you know.
I mean,
So,
and we have that technology. It's just so
yeah,
expensive that it's prohibitive, and I guess it's the same
right.
thing with the smart optics.
Yeah. So yeah, in the optics world, I see a lot of growth in I guess the category would be electro optics.
Hmm.
To give it a category name, it's electronics and optics fused together. It's the cyberpunk. You know, my scope is Bluetooth compatible.
Yeah.
You know, my scope is Bluetooth compatible, and my spotting scope has a USB cord and a rechargeable battery built into it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so that's one area. Another area that I see growth that's sort of closer to home as far as what I'm doing at Swampfox is I see a growth of what I would call middle of the road high value products.
Hmm.
So the way that it used to be 20 years ago and even 15 years ago was you had military grade stuff like the ACOG and the aim point, which was frighteningly expensive, but had this sort of almost mythical reputation because it was those optics were on all the stuff that the cool kids had that you and I couldn't get. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the aim points were on the SWAT team MP5s, and there's a little bit of a halo effect there because I can't get a SWAT team MP5, you know, but I can get the scope that is on it, so I'm sort of closer to the SWAT guy status, you know. And so there was that draw of the choice of professionals. You know, this is the professional choice, the ACOG and the Aimpoint. And you had those really expensive optics, and then you had trash. You had the Bushnell
Mm-hmm.
$100. You know, you had the good scope was the loophole 3 to 9 hunting scope that was like $700. You know, and that was and those were hunting scopes. But there wasn't much middle ground. There wasn't much like high value stuff that simply worked and did what it said it would do, but wasn't the cost of a $1,300 ACOG or a $700 aim point.
Right.
And so we've gotten to a point right now where the technology is matured enough that you can make sort of more basic products that are high value. They do what they say they'll do, and they're it's a $200 red dot or it's a $500 low power variable, and it really doesn't suck for the $500. It's not trash. So there's this sort of middle ground that's really exploding right now, where there are all kinds of really good options, where you don't have to spend $2,800 on the Night Force Attacker. As great of a scope as it is, you don't have to spend that much money to get a good, solid shooting experience that's going to last you a long time. So that's kind of what we're all about and what we're trying to do. And I think that's one of the most promising developments, frankly, in terms of the entire industry and in terms of the entire Second Amendment, which if you want to get into the politics of it, but I think it's tremendously important to have affordable accessories that don't suck, that are affordable for everyday blue-collar working Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to talk about that some more later, but that's a big part of why I do what I do.
Right. So, moving on here, do you have any experience with like government contract stuff and how all that works?
We are not doing that right now with my current company, but I have experience in that from a previous company, from my previous employer. So I do know. I'm gonna sound cynical when I say this, But
Mm-hmm.
please believe me, I'm not being cynical. I'm just telling you how it is. It's
Mm-hmm.
just the reality of it. So government and law enforcement contracts. Military, I don't really have any experience with. Military is a whole different game. But there are aside from the really really big military contracts, there are smaller government and military contracts, and then there are law enforcement contracts, and they are a very very different game than uh, than selling to the civilian market. It's really a completely different mode of sales. It's a completely different approach, and it's a completely different buyer. And frankly, I find the government and police contract world to be a bewildering and frustrating world, because what you have is you have, frankly, bureaucrats uh, who are assigned the ability to purchase things for their agencies,
Mm-hmm.
and they're in that position. They're riding that particular desk. Maybe they're a good logistician. Hopefully they're good at uh, organization. But they're usually there because they're the guy in the office that's good at MS Excel, or they're the guy in the office who's good at understanding the computer software to buy stuff. They're not an expert in what the end users want, and they are running off of a budget that they have no control over,
Mm-hmm.
and so they're often they're often put in very weird positions. So I'll give you an example. So what happens generally is they get allotted a certain amount of money each year.
Right.
So I've got $10,000, that I've been allotted this year. Well, someone's messaging me like crazy right now. I'm going to ignore them. Um, Shoot, let's make it $20,000. So, so I'm a small police department, and I have $20,000 worth of discretionary funds. The equipment slush fund. I sit on that all year long. I don't spend it because someone may wreck a squad car in a police chase, and we have to spend $15,000 on repairs to the squad car, and that could happen tomorrow or it might not. But if it happens tomorrow, I need to have that money. So they don't spend the money. They don't spend the money. They don't let anybody spend their money, and they jealously guard this money. And then at the end of the fiscal year, they have this policy of, well, if you don't spend it, you lose it because obviously you didn't need it.
Right.
So if you don't spend that money, then you don't get the same appropriations next year. So then what they do is they go on a buying spree at some random point of the year. It's not always the same point of the year because not everybody runs the same fiscal year.
Mm-hmm.
But in at the end of August, they'll start calling around and they're like, "Hey, I've got $20,000 and I need to spend it. What do you got?" Well, what do you need? The sergeant says we need new helmets. Okay. So we're going to spend $20,000 on helmets, and we're going to buy as many helmets as we can for $20,000. We got let's see, 50 officers on the department, so ideally we would need 40 to 50 helmets divided by 20,000, and you sort of figure out what your budget is per helmet.
Mm.
And then they go out there and they start calling around, "Hey, you can get me 50 helmets for $20,000 or whatever it is."
Mm-hmm.
It's just an example that I made up. But you'll notice none of this requires them to know which helmets brands are good,
Right.
or having had used a helmet themselves, or knowing if, a helmet brand is not as good as it used to be because they used to be made in, you know, Wyoming, and now they're made in Vietnam, and they, like the
Right.
new ones aren't as good as the old ones. Like those people who have purchasing power are never a subject matter expert in the things they are buying, and they're usually amazingly, incredibly cheap because they're trying to get as much as they can out of the money that they've been allotted. So that's where you get the saying, the only thing cheaper than one cop is two cops. if
Mm.
so that's why that process is totally different than the retail sales to civilians process, where you have someone who's interested in scopes, they want to learn about scopes, they ask subject matter experts, they do their own research on the internet, they comparison shop, they look at the ads, they look at YouTube reviews, and they're trying to decide what they want to get. And then if it's something that they really want, maybe they spend a little bit more. If it's something they don't want that bad, maybe it has to sell for a little bit less. But that you see how that's a much different process than
Yeah.
calling somebody and saying, I have $20,000 to spend and 72 hours to spend it in. What do you got?
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
I find it to be such an ignorant way of purchasing vital equipment. How can you possibly get it right that way? How can you possibly buy the best boots? If you're trying to buy boots for the whole police department, what are the chances that you're going to get it right doing it that way?
Yeah,
That's how they do it.
And my foot's different from his foot too. So,
Right.
yeah.
Or her foot.
Right.
Gee
Oh
whiz.
yeah. Yeah.
Right? So, yeah. And then that's why then that's why you get these sort of stories about how, boots only come in two sizes, too large and too small. Just they never get it right.
All right. Well, I'm going to move on here to the next question. So, if I was going to move into this industry to do something kind of like designing weapons or optics or pairing the two together, something like that,
Yeah.
right? Where I'm thinking and coming up with something new, what would you say would be good technical certifications or experience or skills that I should pursue to further my ability to get into a role like that?
Oddly enough, being an awesome shooter doesn't matter as much as we would like it to, because you're not really shooting that much as part of your daily job. So having a wide set of computer skills will help you out a lot. Knowing things like how to be a whiz at Excel, which is one of my weaknesses that I'm working on, by the way. I need to get better at Excel if I'm going to continue to grow into the role that I want to be in, with the way that my company is going in the next year or so. I'm going to have to get better at this program that, frankly, I'm just not very good at right now. My brain doesn't necessarily work in the same way that Excel wants you to think, and that's something that I'm personally working on. Someone who is better at Excel than I am would have an advantage over me if I was interviewing against them right now for the same job title. Is that exciting and sexy? No. But it's reality.
Yeah.
I would, in terms of manufacturing stuff, everything is computer numerical control. So computer programs like SolidWorks, where you can render 3D models of things and you can explain how this would be machined. I can come up with all sorts of cool looking scope designs on a piece of paper. I can draw them on the back of a napkin. But then if you ask me how a 5-axis CNC machine would go about cutting that scope body in a most efficient way with a minimal amount of time and get into all the little nooks and crannies that I had drawn on my napkin, it might not even be possible. I might have drawn an impossible scope to make because we don't have the technology to cut metal in that way, to create that little pocket in the corner of the inside of the scope tube diameter that I drew on the back of the napkin. So if I'm trying to be a designer, I need to know what the limitations of the hardware are. So I have to understand the context of the work that I'm doing. So something like that, where you understand how CNC machining works and you can work with it. You can program a CNC machine, or you can do a render in SolidWorks and show how your new windage turret assembly will be put together at the factory. Those sort of skills are worth gold. I mean, those people are way ahead compared to everybody else.
Got it. Yeah, that's kind of what we talked about previously. Is like when I was thinking, I was like, should I get a CNC like certification? Just I'm not going to be a machinist, but I could apply
Well,
that
you don't know.
towards
You
yeah.
might. You might wind up being a machinist because somebody has to be the guy that programs the CNC to make the first 45-degree offset mount. And then, if you wrote that program and it makes a high quality CNC made 45-degree offset mount and it can turn one out every 3 minutes because you were really efficient when you wrote that program, that's worth money.
Oh, I see. I
That's
got it. Yeah, that makes
that's
sense.
that's worth a lot of salary.
Got it.
Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with being I mean, that's still really in the 21st century, that's being a machinist. It's not necessarily like standing over a lathe and getting your hands dirty and, having, having grease all over the place. That was true 30 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago, but now everything is CNC,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so much better for it. That's actually one of the reasons why these middle of the road optics are as good as they are, because your tolerances and your clearances and the consistency of your parts is so much better with computer numerical control than it ever would have been before. I mean, imagine how hard it was to make, say scopes, a military grade scope in the 1980s. They were basically cobbling these things together by hand one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
How could you be consistent from product to product? It seems impossible now in hindsight.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. Oh, so areas of the country, as far as where these companies are congregating, like you've got Silicon Valley in California that kind of attracts all the tech companies, right? So, are there any areas like that for the firearms and or optics industries in the
Yeah.
U.S. that you're aware of?
Yeah. So this is a story of the old and the new. So the old way was what they called, I think it's called Firearm Alley. It has a name like that, but it's in Connecticut, the Hartford, Connecticut area where Colt is. There used
Mm-hmm.
to be a stretch of road basically in Connecticut that had several major gun manufacturers there. Like Ruger was there, and Marlin Firearms was there, and Smith and Wesson was there, and they were all within just a few miles of each other, like used car dealerships or something.
Mm-hmm.
But then politics changed, and Connecticut and New York became, and the whole East Coast became very anti-gun. And pretty soon, you can't make Smith and Wesson. You have to have all these legal exemptions, to make Smith and Wesson firearms in the East Coast, because you're making a 15-round magazine to go in the gun, and 15-round magazines are now illegal in that state. So, it's kind of like Jack Daniels being in a dry county in Kentucky, which is true. You're making a product that's illegal to sell out the front door. You can't have a retail space and just sell that product to passersby, because it's literally illegal in the state where you're making it. So that's not a super friendly environment for those companies, and the tax situation for them was not super friendly either. And so what we've seen really in the last 10 years is a migration away. Beretta's done it too. Beretta's in Maryland. It's very close. Accokeek, Maryland is where they had their big Beretta plant, and they're not talking about it much, but they have a new plant in Tennessee that's 3 times the size of the old plant, and they're like, hey, we're expanding, everybody. We're Beretta, and we're super popular, and we're so popular that we're expanding to this new facility in Tennessee. Well, okay, sure, they expanded to the new facility in Tennessee, and then they gutted their old facility in Accokeek, Maryland, and now that facility doesn't really make that much. There's some, offices there, and there's kind of the corporate cube farms there, and some support staff, and the production lines are making, a few parts here and there that aren't, politically unviable. They're maybe making over and under shotguns for sporting clays and stuff. And
Mm.
then all the really cool military and law enforcement stuff is being made in Tennessee, where people like guns. Heckler and Koch has got the place in Georgia that they're starting up. There are places that have moved to Texas, but you're seeing a flight from the coasts for political reasons. The West Coast people are leaving, the East Coast people are leaving, and they're generally going to the Deep South and to Texas, where the tax rates are much lower. You sort of have a population of people who still view a hands-on job, like a factory job, as a good opportunity. If you get a factory job and you're just assembling metal pieces at a factory in Massachusetts, everybody else is going to look down on you because they all want to be highfalutin, financial consultants and so forth. They don't really look at a job where you use your hands as a good job prospect anymore. If you go to Alabama or Georgia and you offer that same job, and the culture there views that job as a job that's worth having and a job that you should be proud of. It's not a bad thing to work with your hands every day and assemble 15-round magazines in Georgia or in Alabama. So I think the Deep South and Texas and these sort of gun-friendly states where the taxes are also lower are becoming very attractive. And even the really, really big companies like Colt and others are either moving away or looking to move away from the coasts.
Makes sense. All right, so my last question here is, how competitive would you say the job market for the firearms and optics industry is to get into?
It's hard. It's hard to judge. That's not something that I'm really an expert on. I would say, in all honesty, there's two levels of it. There's two levels of competitiveness in the way that it's perceived. And I hope this makes sense. So I think some people think that it's more competitive than it is because they don't have as much to offer as they think they do. And those are people who view it as like a fun hobby job. Like, I've always been a gun guy and I like guns, so I'll get a job in the gun industry and then I'll have fun every day instead of working. You're not going to get very far. You're going to find that nobody wants you. So that's kind of one level of it. If you think that it's like going out shooting on the weekends with your buddy, but except you get to do that every day and you get paid for it, that's not the case. And so you're gonna be disappointed in what you find. On the other hand, if you do all the things that I talked about earlier, there's always room for people who are good at what they do. You just have to be better than the other guy.
Right.
It's like, how do I say this? Like right now, it's hard to be a professional photographer because everybody's got a good camera. Good cameras are cheap, and there's a lot of people that are like, oh, I'm just gonna, I'm really good at photography, so I'm gonna quit my day job and I'm gonna be a professional photographer, and then they don't make it because they were viewing it as a hobby that they could make money off of, and not really as the job that it really is.
Mm-hmm.
There's only a couple of true professional photographers I know, and they work their butts off. They really work their butts off, and frankly, they're underpaid for how hard they work. And they do it because it's a passion of theirs, and that passion, they're so good at it that it gets recognized by other people, and that generates the demand for their service and their product. So if you're good enough, and you're passionate enough, and you work hard enough, and you can show people that you're going to work hard enough, then yeah, it's possible. Then you're going to be competitive in the market, no matter what. If you're just a guy who says, I'm sick of selling insurance or whatever my day job is that I don't like, and I want to have fun and play with guns and get paid for it, then you're going to think that it's really hard to to break into this industry.
Well, I mean, because
That's
it
my
would
take
be
on it,
then,
at
I guess,
least.
for you.
Yeah, and what I'm basically saying is this is a lot of work. You know, like
Right.
this is a lot of work and a lot of worry, and you have to take this seriously, and you have to show up every day. And you know, do I get to shoot on the weekends? Yeah, but you know what? I was doing it before when I was working other jobs anyway.
Right.
So, you know,
Yeah. Well, that's all that I have here. I really
cool.
very much appreciate your time. And so I look forward to talking to you again. Probably
Yeah,
sending
if
some
you
stupid Facebook memes or something.
right, if you have any follow up questions while you're working on your project and you just want to ping me with them, go ahead. You know, and
Awesome.
I'll let you know. Let you know what I think. But you know, it's a sample size of one. You know, you've gotten one guy's opinion here, but I've been in and out of this industry since 2012, working for other people, and I had my own gun store, which you know was never super successful, but I did do it
Hmm.
from 2006 through 2011 when I finally gave up my FFL. So you know, I've been in and out and around this industry long enough to see things go wrong and things go right, and long enough to have made some really big mistakes and avoid some other ones. So you know, I'm just one guy, but I'm not new to the game either.
Yeah. Yeah, you're definitely the best resource that I know, for sure. So I appreciate that very much.
Thanks, man. No,
Yes.
I think you got a ton of potential, Josh. I think you're just, you know, I don't know where it's going to go for you exactly, but but again, with the whole being a self-starter thing and having a work ethic, to me, it doesn't really matter where you end up because you're going to excel at whatever you do because you don't know how to do anything else. Nothing else is good enough.
Right.
And you know, like I said, there's two kinds of guys. There's the guy that looks for more work to do, and then there's the guy that looks how to avoid work. And I know which one you are. I can tell.
Well, I
So
appreciate that.
wherever you
I
wind
think
up
I
and whatever you
appreciate
wind up
that.
doing, you're going to do good.
All right. I appreciate it, man.
All right.
All righty,
All right. I'll
sir.
see you around.
All right. Have a good one.
All right. See you on Facebook.
All right. Bye.